Guten Tag and welcome to podcast number 2. So, first of all, thanks very much for the response and the reaction to the first podcast. It went really, really well, better than expected. I'm sure so many of you took plenty from it, which is what the podcast is all about. This isn't for drama or stories or gossip or trying to catch people out. This podcast is a self-development one, and it's for finding as much actionable information or inspirational stories as possible, so that you can use those little bits to improve, whether it's fitness, school, business, whatever the discipline you're most interested in. I think that in all of the podcasts I've recorded so far, I've achieved that by getting plenty of information that you could use literally that day, that month, that week to help yourself improve, to help yourself make progress in whatever domain that is. So moving on to today's guest. This is a fascinating podcast, and Cathal is a fascinating guy. So Cathal very much passes my definition of what a polymath is. So someone who is very, very skilled and very just excels at a lot of different disciplines. Okay, I've known him for a long time and I've always found him very, very interesting. Not because I agree with everything he says or everything he does, but just because of his work ethic, which is incredible in my opinion, and his attitude towards life. He's a very, very positive guy. You rarely catch him ever in a bad mood. So what did we actually talk about in the podcast? We talk about the time he raised €66,000 for charity, which is incredible. I made a big fundraising effort last year and was delighted to raise €6,000. He raised 66. He did a marathon with zero training. So we go into the story around that. That's an absolutely brilliant story and very inspiring, because I think raising money for charity is something that everyone wants to do at some stage in their life, a big amount or small. So he raised €66,000, did a marathon with zero training, and carried a sliotar on a hurl for the whole marathon. We talk about his Gaelic football, soccer and hurling. Cathal was captain of his club teams in both Gaelic football and hurling at the same time. Being captain of a Gaelic football team or a hurling team in Ireland is a real privilege. So he was captain of both at the same time. He's excelled at both of them in Turin's recent run to the All-Ireland final, which is incredible for a Mayo club. We talk about his early days playing soccer and trials over in England, which is first where I came across Cathal. I came across him on the soccer pitch playing for Urlar United. We also talk about tough choices and compromises. When you're like Cathal, it can be very obvious, but I think everyone goes through these situations where they have, the road not taken. They can do anything, or they have multiple choices in front of them, but they can't do every choice. So we talk about how to make difficult choices and how to pivot and which way and what his thought processes were behind his key pivots, which were stopping playing Gaelic football to focus on hurling, stopping his tech business to go back in and study medicine. So that is very, very helpful, because everyone goes through decisions like that. So there is tons of actionable information in this, and I think particularly for young men, early 20s, when we haven't a fucking clue what we're doing, which is what I was like and what I'm pretty sure everyone in their early 20s doesn't really know what to be doing. So for that age bracket in particular, I think there's some brilliant mental frameworks and just ideas and concepts on how to become more accomplished and how to look at improving in any discipline, whether that's a certain sport, whether that's in business, or whether it's in academia. So without any further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Dr. Cathal Freeman. Live in 3, 2, 1. So I'm delighted to be joined today by the one and only Cathal Freeman. So the first memory I have of you, Cathal, you laugh at this, is actually Urlar United.
Offer.
Let's bring it right back. Maybe under 12s?
Yeah.
Under 10s even?
Yeah.
Soccer? You played a lot of soccer at that time, I remember. I remember knowing you initially as a soccer player.
Yeah. This was like kind of the first organised sport I would have played really was soccer down in Urlar. Kind of didn't have any great love for it, but it was the first kind of organised. Soccer's really good at that. It's really organised at the underage levels, at kind of 10s, 12s, 14s. It was really, really well run. And I kind of fell into soccer because my classmates Kenny Feeney and Michael Morley were doing it, and I was mad to try absolutely anything that I could get my hands on.
Yes.
And I kind of got real serious into it for a period, even to the point of giving up hurling and football at one stage just to focus on soccer. Now this was the proof of kind of where my loyalties actually lay was the minute I copped that I wasn't going to be a professional soccer player over in England. I quit. There's a funny story of, I was like 16 maybe. I remember being in school in Ballyhonus, and a call came through from Swansea to see would I go over for a trial, and I had to ring them back and be like, "Well, lads, I retired. I've stopped playing soccer." Like the minute I came back, I was over in Southampton for a while,
So you actually did get the trials?
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. When I went over, but like it was amazing. I can even remember the first day I was over there was a Monday, and I remember internally in my own head going, I'm not able for this.
Yes.
I wasn't good. Like I firmly wasn't good enough. I was big and strong. I was the same height then as I am now. I was probably 15 at the time. I was aggressive given my kind of GA background, but in terms of technically, wasn't at it. Was not capable of playing at that level. Had an unbelievable experience. Just something that I look back on and think, wow, it was amazing to have that opportunity.
Of course, especially at that age.
Oh, at that age, it was unbelievable. We were literally professionals. We were over there for a couple. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks we were over there for, and we were treated unbelievably. You lived and breathed being a professional sports person, which is, the dream in many ways. But at the same time, I came home and very firmly I was like, this is not for me. I'm just not there. And kind of Ted Webb.
Was it like when you went there? Did you say like you didn't like playing the game, or was it just you didn't feel like you were as good as you needed to be?
I loved the game in the sense that I loved the competitiveness of it. I loved the fitness kind of aspect of it, but I just wasn't at the level. And it's kind of hard to know. Like we're 15 or 16 years down the line now.
Yeah.
But my abiding memory of it is I remember being there on that Monday evening after the first day of training. I really don't know, am I at the level that's required for this? And they really did. Like, it's cutthroat business. They really emphasised, you need to be significant. If you're from Ireland or from not from the area, you need to be significantly better than what we already have in order for us to take you, in order for us to invest everything we would invest in you. And
was there any other Irish kids out there?
Dylan Webb from Knock was there.
Okay.
Webby was a phenomenal player.
I played against him.
Yeah, again, there's the kind of the opposite side. Webby probably wasn't physically as developed. Webby was the year younger than me. He probably wasn't as physically developed as I was. Maybe wasn't as aggressive. But my God, technically, he could do anything with the ball. And he was so well able from that perspective, and he got on much, much better in many ways over there because he was just so technically excellent, and they could see, right, there's a guy that we could work with because he has the foundation. Whereas with me, it was always going to be a much bigger project in order to make me technically proficient enough in order to get me to where I needed to.
And when you watch the World Cup now, are you interested even in it?
Oh no, soccer bores me too.
I'm the same. I can't watch soccer.
Like, it was an incredibly exciting World Cup, and I did kind of dip in and out of a few games, but you couldn't pay me to sit down for 90 minutes.
Yes.
Even the fact
the only game I've watched in the last maybe 3-4 years, well, the last 10 years really, have been Champions League finals.
Yeah.
Or World Cup finals.
Yeah.
Ireland at the Euros against France. They're the only games. It's very, very hard to watch if you're not into it. But I have friends who live and breathe soccer, and my brother Brendan, Ian, Dad, they love watching soccer matches.
Yeah.
I think you are similar to me in that you find it very, very hard to sit down and watch a game.
Extremely hard, because I've no investment in it, I suppose, from an emotional aspect. My dad wasn't into soccer. I can understand, kind of, some people might say, oh, I don't understand how lads in Ireland can be so keen on an English team or whatever. But if you're a father, or if you have someone that you have a really close relationship and they have that abiding loyalty to one team, it's actually a brilliant thing to have that connection with your father. Whereas in our house was hurling football.
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
it. You
yeah.
know, kind of Six Nations rugby was actually a much bigger thing in our house than soccer ever was. I mean, I fondly remember I used to love when the Six Nations was on, because on a February Saturday afternoon, because there'd be no farming work done. We would all sit round and actually watch that, even though rugby's so far away from our, like, I've never played a game of rugby in my life, but you know, just to have those common connections. And soccer was never a thing in our house, and it's never something I could mentally engage with.
Yes.
I find it too bloody boring, to be honest, you know.
So it's similar to the Erler. I remember you playing for Erler, and you were very confident in terms of, like, you could control a game from a young age, right? And you laugh at this, but I remember you marking Aidan O'Shea. Do you know the year you got to the All-Ireland minor final?
Yeah.
So I was watching you in the league final. Bravey were playing Ahamore.
Oh, in Clamars.
In Clamars, yeah, I was watching it. And yourself and Aidan were marking each other. And I remember watching the two of you, because your approach to marking each other was letting the other do what he wanted to do.
Yeah. Who do more damage?
Pretty much, yeah. It wasn't
No.
Lee Keegan or
No, we weren't
O'Hara
really clashing into each other, like, so we'd get away from.
But it was amazing to watch, because, like, you were only 18, and I was from a different club, but I was watching from side. It was amazing to watch how mature your heads were. You were controlling so much, from the kickouts of both teams, what to do, from, like, the controlling possession, as in, this is what we're going to do with the ball, controlling, okay, this is where I'm going to park myself when we're defending or when we don't have the ball. And so much of it, and I think you'll agree, was unconscious. You weren't even thinking about it, you're just doing it, and him the same. Something probably, like, it's not really coachable, is it? Or where did that come from?
Well, I feel
it was similar on the soccer pitch with Erla. It was like you just kind of knew where to be.
Yeah. Well, I not to sound like Michael Jordan, but I would have taken, from a very young age, I would have taken sport unbelievably personally. And I know that's kind of trite at this stage, in a sense that everyone says this, but I mean, you know, one of the memories I have is I was playing in goal at under 14 Fela in hurling when I was under 10, and I let in a goal and I started bawling, crying, and my brother came down who was midfield and, like, grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and said, "Cop the fuck on, you know, it's the start of the second half, cop on to yourself." But you know, even at that age, the whole thing, I kind of, again, it's probably a pretty God complex to a certain extent. I saw myself as, this was the thing that I wanted to do, no matter what kind of sport it was I was playing. I was like, I just fucking loved sports so much.
Yes.
I felt I wanted to be as good as I possibly could be, and if things didn't work out, I took it unbelievably personally. So when you have that from a very early age, and you're so mentally invested in things, to my detriment, and as
of course. Well, it's good and bad.
Particularly my middle teenage years, I really struggled with it. Like, if we had a game on a Tuesday night for a league game, I would be up the walls all day. You couldn't talk to me because I'd be so wound up about what's going to happen and the pressure that I would put on myself. And
that's a funny one, though, because someone from the outside, and I've seen this with a lot of players coaching, they might assume, oh, that's coming from the parents, and the parents are driving that into you. No, it's not. A lot of the time, it just comes, certain players just have it. They're just so into it, and the parents mightn't even be that into the sport at all. And I know it's your parents, they would have had it relaxed enough. They wouldn't be driving you had to be this or you had to be that.
Absolutely not.
But where do you think it comes from? Well, that a player is just, like, takes the sport so seriously so young, when it's not being driven into them from an external source, really?
I think possibly you could kind of engage in a bit of revisionist history in terms of applying meaning after the fact.
Yeah.
But you kind of, I suppose there's factors that I would think that played a huge role in my mind. The fact that I had an older brother, I had a next door neighbour that were 4 and 5 years older than me, you know, and playing with them, they, like, would take the piss all the time, and I would get so frustrated in terms of trying to keep up with them. But, like, I'm talking about, like, 5, 6, 7, 8, trying to keep up with them, and it just imbued this kind of aggression and this sense of almost injustice that like
You had to be more determined to even compete.
To even try to play with those lads, and not like they weren't doing anything different than any older brother ever does to a younger brother. But I feel that was a very formative. We spent our lives. Luckily we had a very big front garden in our house, and it was ideal for a 2-on-2 soccer match, and we would spend hours down there playing. And it often ended up with me in tears or like me with like muck everywhere. But it's the absolute time of our lives. And I would imagine in time to come, that sense of this is fucking life and death. This is really, really important. Just kind of folded into, I ended up playing soccer, hurling and Gaelic, and it just kind of, oh yeah, well, look at him playing. I have my boots on here. I'm taking this absolutely dead serious at all times.
Anytime I'm going to play, it was nearly wired into you. I have to take it serious.
Absolutely.
Even any competition, any sport, is just like, okay, I'm going to take this serious because it was serious in the back garden.
Oh, absolutely dead serious. And then it's funny that now, as I say that to me, one of the things, and something like again, you kind of have mental masturbation when people speak well of you, but there's certain people that speak well of you, it really does stick with you. And a guy called Dan Greeley, who would have been one of my heroes growing up from touring, a legendary figure within our club, and someone who has dedicated their lives to the club in a very kind of understated way. He has never looked for any, and it's one of the great things, he's never looked for any credit himself. But I remember him being at a medal presentation, and Dom invited me along to give the medals to the kids. And in his kind of open speech, he said, I've worked with Cathal since he was 9 or 10 years old, and the one thing I always remember, he was the first fella I ever came across that absolutely took ownership for a team at that age. He was the fella who was texting guys. He was the fella who was making sure that people turned up to training. I have notebooks at home where I used to come home from touring training on a Sunday morning, and I would have a list of the panel, and I would tick off who attended training and who didn't. And it was just that level of absolute ownership for the thing that I am a part of this team. This team reflects me, so therefore, and some people might call it bullying, but I would try actively to influence people in order to bring them round to my sense of how important this is. Of course.
Well, that brings me lovely to when you're talking about tracking the diary there. So I remember you actually gave me, I still have it upstairs or in the attic, but my stuff is all over the place at the minute because I'm moving houses and things. So, but you gave me a tracker diary. Do you remember the GA tracker diaries?
Yeah.
And you had got one maybe with the Mayo minors or the Mayo under-20s. You actually gifted it to me.
Right.
The one with Mickey Hart had a lot of stuff, and you would track your nutrition.
Yeah.
And you track like how your mental space was and how things were going. And I actually filled it out and used it. But you gave it to me then. So were you tracking your performances quite young?
Absolutely.
With pen and paper.
Yeah, it's funny now. I actually forgot about all that stuff, but that would have to link it back to what you said earlier about watching myself and Ado play against each other when we were young. My outlook and my how I approached things was very much influenced by Jimmy Lyons in Ahmore, who famously your father and him.
Yes,
but Jimmy would have hugely influenced me in terms of, Jimmy was he was one of the few people that I came across that genuinely loved it and lived it the way I would have. And not that I'm a fucking paragon of virtue by any stretch, but Jesus, it was...
No, but I think there's people who love it as much as you in every club, but at the same time...
You don't come across them all that often.
Exactly, yeah.
And Jimmy would have Jimmy's an incredibly intelligent fella, and he would have looked to other sports, particularly AFL, American football, in terms of how they were approaching things. And I think that tracker originated from Jimmy, who gave it to me. And I loved that idea of sitting down after a game, of going through what were my hand passes like, what were my kick passes like, what was I doing in terms of my running, how many forward runs did I make, how many defensive runs did I make, all this kind of thing.
And how old were you when you started doing that, when you started tracking your performances with pen and paper, say?
I'd say I was 14, 15 would have been the thing. But now, I will say, Kev, as brilliant as that was, I did eventually move away because, as I said, the game consumed me too much, and I would be racked with nerves coming into games. I moved then to a much more simple, again, a pen and paper based, and I would still do it to this day, a very simple marker system where I would have 3 or 4 key things that I want to get done in a game. I go into a cubicle in a toilet for a game, sit there, I have it in my socks, pull it out, have a read about it, have a think about each of the points, and then that becomes my method of looking back on a game subsequently. How did I approach these 3 or 4 things? Did I achieve those 3 or 4 things? Because, you know, a game, particularly in hurling now, which is my primary focus, it's so variable, it takes on a life of its own that you kind of just have to make it up as you go along. But you still can have intent about certain aspects of your game that you really want to push. So that marker system and that tracker system is still with me, but in a much more modified way that I feel would much more suit who I am as a person.
But
you know?
More than sport, I'd say, I'm guessing, but I'd say you still track things outside of sport, pen and paper as well.
Yeah.
So it transfers into other aspects of your life.
Definitely, yeah.
So I'm a bit obsessed with tracking and pen and paper. So I have like 5 different diaries. So like one would be for like business ideas and just the marketing ideas and all this different things. And then another would be a to-do list. They're all different journals, and then another one would be something like this where you're actually writing a concrete idea, not just a thought in a cloud. So, but to go back to the tracking, I took on the tracking then. I found it extremely helpful, and my GA career didn't last much longer than the diary, but I found it helpful in loads of other aspects of my life. Mentally, if I track things, I tend to do better at them.
Yeah.
So when I was manager of Gary Moore, when I was coaching Mayo Gales, I got them to track, and I bought Mayo Gales a diary, and I tried to encourage.
Wow.
Yeah, I bought them all a diary, and we'd go through after certain games. We'd say, okay, what was 3 things we did well the last time? What was 3 things we could work on? Very, very simple stuff like that. What is it about the act of pen and paper that helps to maybe solidify or make it a bit more concrete, the lessons of the day in life or in sport?
Well, I would feel there's something very concrete about it. There's something indelible about it. You're not going to get rid of this piece of paper. And I feel if you were to write something, and I know this in work, because I spend my life in work writing notes about what has happened and trying to be truthful in your account of an exchange. Certainly I do, and I imagine the vast majority of people really deeply engage when they have to write something down, because you can't change it. Whereas if you're writing a text message or in an online diary, you can always edit, you can always delete, and it's gone. There's no chance. Whereas if you have to write something down, there is something very literal and very physical about it that is going to stick with you, and it's something that your mind really has to absolutely engage with. There's no do-overs when you write something down.
So it's like it becomes a more deeper form of reality, or a more deeper understanding of reality.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard. People think, oh, Joe, I'm a very evidence-based person, or I only believe facts, and then you actually learn a little bit and you see how unbelievably biased we all are.
Absolutely.
To see in the world what we want to see.
Yeah.
So that writing is helping you grasp reality even firmer.
Yeah.
Because even if you're writing down stuff and it doesn't seem to be true, you actually catch yourself, okay, that's actually, once it goes to paper, it's actually not true.
Yeah.
So it's not just telling yourself how great you are or how well life is going when you're writing down things down. You actually, it's like organising a room almost.
Yeah. I find it's a thing. If you're in your own head, you can kind of convince yourself anything, and we all have to convince ourselves. But if you write something down, it's almost like a second person enters the conversation where you're justifying this, and you're really mentally engaged in it and going, wait, this might be absolute bollocks. This doesn't sit with me internally well at all. You know, I might be writing something, or I might be trying to do something that's actually not for me. It's for the show of it, or Instagram, or it's for the idea that, you know, I've done this thing or I've achieved this thing, but is it actually speaking to you internally? And if you write it out, I feel you're much more likely to catch yourself out in your own bullshit.
Yes, yes. And so to switch gears a little bit, and you mentioned already your job. So medicine, right? You're in school, I'm in school. Medicine seems like the pinnacle of the education system, okay? What do you think are people like misunderstanding about the steps to get from one to the other? For me, it's almost like, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, it's almost like an impossible dream. Wouldn't it be unbelievable to be a doctor? And you're a doctor, Cathal Freeman, now. So
Don't get sick.
what do you think people are misreading about the steps to get there, in terms of, like, is it a lot harder than you thought it would be? Is it more straightforward? Obviously everyone can't be a doctor. What stood out to you on your journey to becoming a doctor, as in, okay, this actually wasn't what I thought it would be in terms of difficulty? Or
so there's kind of a couple of different approaches you think about in relation to that question. So one, the vast majority of doctors know other doctors, and I cannot stress to you, in my opinion, how important this is. It's almost like a disease of association. So is it, and I agree with you in terms of how I would have viewed it at 17. I'd be like, that's way out of my reach. You know, like, I'm a
I
moderate,
think we all do.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a moderately bright fella, but like, I'm not fucking Einstein or anything like it. But then, you know, over time, I'm very lucky. I have a very good friend in Donald Sullivan. He's a Limerick football goalkeeper, an incredibly well-rounded individual who studied medicine in Galway. And not that Donny isn't a fantastic fella, but, you know, Donny's a normal fella. You know, he puts on his pants the same way I do. And, you know, these things, and probably as I worked myself out a bit, because, you know, it's a very, even I know for myself, like, it's a very long journey to try, and I'm still on it in terms of working myself out, in terms of what makes myself tick. But when you meet people like Donny, who are brilliant but normal, or like my sister as well, she is one, she's a GP in Ballinrobe, you know, you kind of get the sense that, wait, if you're willing to lock yourself in a room and work hard and be single-minded about something, essentially anything is possible. You know, I read this phrase at one stage, you know, everything.
That's a good. It's a good quote there.
Yeah, like, everything is knowable. This, I can't remember where I picked it up, but it's not an original by me at all. But this idea that everything is knowable, that if you're willing to pay the price,
Everything is knowable. I agree with you there, but not everything is understandable. In terms of, like, there's certain things that if I was just to take time to try and understand them, I just wouldn't be able to understand them, compared to someone else who would take an hour class and, okay, I get that, and I can move on to the next lesson. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. This is the great thing about life. Everyone ticks along, and things speak to different people in different ways. You know, it's brought to me a lot when people say, "Oh, what a mad decision! What that was! How incredibly hard that was!" But I'm telling you, it wasn't at all. It was the most logical thing in the world for me to go back.
How did you make that decision?
Very easily.
How did you make? When did you decide? And was it festering in your head for a long time? When did you decide, okay, I'm going to become a doctor?
It was something that had been in the back of my brain for a very long time since I was a child. It actually was planted in my brain when I was about 9 or 10. My sister's 8 years older than me, and my neighbour, I was getting a lift. My neighbour asked me, what is your sister doing? And I said, oh, she's gone to college, doing something in the hospital. I don't know. It's, you know, you're 9 or 10, getting the breeze. And I said, I think it's nursing. And not that there's anything wrong with nurses, Jesus, don't take this up wrong. But I remember I explained this story back to my sister, and she's like, God, I'm studying to be a doctor. I was like, oh yeah, oh jeez, that's very cool, isn't it? Yeah. And these things stuck with me. But, you know, when I was 17 or 18, all I cared about was football and hurling. The night before the leaving cert, I was at Mayo minor training. You know, these were the things. I was an idiot at that stage, you know, in the sense that I was just chasing the thing that I thought was most important in life.
Yeah.
And it is and has been incredibly important.
Well, different things are important at different
Yeah, you go
times.
through phases, and at that phase, you couldn't talk to me about studying. You know,
Yes.
I was just away with the fairies in terms of where my priorities were. And then as I got older, I realised, wait, like hurling football are going to end here. I need something that's going to keep me happy and give me the same sense of purpose that I've always had when I'm 50 as when I'm 25, you know?
Yes.
And I felt, and for me at least, this was the thing. This was the thing that I knew. I was like, fuck, if I could do that, like that's something that will keep me happy. And it, like, I'm very lucky in the sense that
How old were you when you started thinking like that?
Probably.
So if you weren't thinking like that when you were 17, 18, when did you start thinking like that?
I would say at 25, I think stopping playing Gaelic was a big decision. That's one of, if not the hardest decision I ever made, because I knew it was an entire step change in how I was going to approach life.
Well, you can do anything, you know, within reason. You can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're trying to make room for something big, you know, a relationship, a job, an opportunity in sport, even, you're going to have to get rid of something else. So you cut out the football, but you added in becoming a doctor.
Yeah, but it was a
going back to college, we'll say.
Yeah, it was a like I'd hate this to be like presto change. I made this decision and then I made that decision, and that would be very much applying meaning after the fact. But I knew there was something in my mind. I didn't want to spend my 20s training, and you know, the life of a judo player is it's a nightmare in many ways, because you're tired all the time, you're training all the time, you don't have energy, and you're not giving and you know deep down yourself you're not giving of your best to either cause of which you're trying to help.
Well, you don't really realise, I think you don't really realise that at the time. Like when I was younger, I'm still young, I'm 31 now. I still feel young, yeah. We're still pretty young, we'll tell ourselves that.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, I was trying to do a lot at once. And we're all still trying to do a lot at once. But you don't really realise, okay, actually there's only so many hours in the day, I can't do all this. Yeah. When did you start to realise, okay, I'm going to have to sacrifice this for this? Because it's not a young person's thought, it's someone who's mature and starts to realise, okay, I'm going to have to stop doing this if I want to do this.
Yeah, it was a very progressive thing. I bring it back to one of my best friends, Michael Morley, talking to me. I used to sleep, fuck off. I mean, 3, 4, 5 hours a night, and was one of those people who took pride in the fact that I didn't sleep well, or not that I didn't sleep well, but I didn't sleep much.
Yes.
And I used to come out with this line, I can sleep when I'm dead, and all this kind of nonsense.
I did the exact same thing, yes.
But like, again, just deluded in terms of, thought I was Superman, thought I was the second coming of Jesus, and all this kind of stuff. But it was a progressive thing that I kind of started whittling away things that weren't that important, or at least that didn't, or that I felt that there were other things that were getting neglected that meant more to me. And that was both my personal life, my relationships, what I was actually doing with myself, and where I wanted to be. And it's a fucking hard thing, but you have to make hard decisions. And I stand by it. And even to this day, I think about it in terms of the relationships that were lost because I stopped playing Gaelic. And, missing out. Like, I loved Gaelic. I fucking gave my life to it for so long. But at the same time, it was the hardest, but also the best decision that at least one of the best decisions that I ever made.
And that was tied in with going back to college?
Well, it was the start of the process of kind of coming round to myself, in the sense of, right, I need to start prioritising exactly what I'm doing here. And at the time, the driving decision was touring. Like, there's no point getting away. It wasn't that I was going to go, I'm making a big gap in order to fill it with something else. I was making a big gap because I was so deeply frustrated with how touring were going. And not that I'm bigger than touring or anything like that, but I knew if we wanted to get to where we wanted to get to, someone was going to have to fucking kind of put a stake in the ground here and say, no, enough is enough. We're doing something different. And I
felt like you committing fully to hurling was one of those things.
Yeah, entirely. Like, and again, it sounds egotistical, but I knew in my head, I said, if I commit to this fully, we can win Connacht titles. And at that stage, obviously the long-term dream was to win All Ireland, but like the proximal thing was win Connacht titles, win Connacht finals, compete at that level. And I, again, deludedly, to a large extent, but I was entirely convinced that if I committed myself to hurling properly and committed myself to touring and could drive the thing the way I felt it needed to be driven without the distraction, because you know the fact of it was, and this was the real killer, I was captain of touring and Ahmore at the one time, and I can't tell you how much stress that caused me, because you wanted to give your absolute best. You knew that you were in a position of kind of leadership and authority.
How old were you when you were captain of both at once?
20, I was probably captain of, I think I was made captain of Ahmore at 2012, 2013 time, and then I was made captain of touring at 2014, 2015. So those 2 years, 2014, 2015, I was captain of both. And
how old were you?
24, 23, 24.
Okay.
Incredibly stressful. Took the jobs extremely seriously. Like even, this only cropped up a couple of days ago, just the madness that I do. Stephen Coyne, who's one of the main men in touring, was getting married in Donegal, or in Tyrone, and then the wedding reception was in Donegal. I went up for Coyne's wedding in the afternoon, drove back down, trained for Ahmore, then drove back to Donegal for the reception that night. Like at the time, you couldn't have told me any different at the time. I was like, I'm the captain, I cannot miss training under any circumstances. But you know, in reflection, it was absolute lunacy what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I was constantly trying to chase being this kind of thing of this leader, this person that was always dependable, that was always there, and I was serving neither master correctly, you know.
And I did something similar when I was first year manager at Gary Moore. I was like, I'm not going to miss one session the whole year, like not one session. So it wasn't until the second year. The first year didn't go that well at all.
Yeah.
And the second year, then one of the older guys, Tom Cunningham, he said, he was a selector, and he said to me, he was encouraging me to go on holidays, encouraging me to take a weekend off, and things went way better even though I started taking time off.
Yeah.
So I missed maybe, still you're not going to miss much, maybe 5 sessions in the year.
I was going to say you're still at like 95%
yes,
attendance.
yeah, and took a 5-day holiday, and things actually felt far better.
Yeah.
And things ran far better, even though I was taking a little bit of a break. But it's hard to convince you associate break with laziness when you're younger. But just to bring it back a little bit, so how did you make the decision around that time when you were captain of both to go back and study medicine?
So that happened after the fact. So the decision to stop playing football was, funnily enough, driven a lot by Jimmy Lyons, the football manager, who really, you know, encouraged me to consider dropping one or the other, because he just felt it was unworkable to do both in the way that I even, and I knew
and he was right.
He was right, he was entirely right. But I think Jimmy didn't think the decision would go the way it would, you know, because Jimmy, in the same sense that I feel about touring and how absolutely central to me that is, Jimmy feels that about Ahmore. So it was, you know, there's just a duality there that's just not, it's not kind of, you can't fit them together. But in terms of how the decision came around, it was a thing of just talking to my sister a lot, in terms of, you know, she kind of knew that it was in the back of my head from when I was young, and she was like, look, Al, if you don't do it now, you're going to get a girlfriend, you're going to get a job, you're going to buy a house, you're going to settle down, you're never going to do it. You just need to bloody do the thing. And
that was very wise.
Oh, very wise. But you know, I would always say that I went into it in a very kind of level-headed fashion, so I probably protected myself a little bit. So
but did you have any doubts that you could do it? No.
Oh, all the time, absolutely all the time. So I went in. So there was an exam you have to do to get into it.
Yeah, what's that called?
It's called the GAMSAT.
Yes.
So I hadn't told anyone. My sister knew, no one else knew. And the exam happens once a year, happens in March and happens in September. I had I booked the exam for March and I booked it for September because it's an incredibly odd exam. You'll never sit anything like it. Like you'll do it and you'll never sit another exam similar to it. So I went in and I was like, look, I will go, I'll try it out, and then the test run is March, the real one is in September. I'm going to go balls to the wall for that all summer. Cleared my decks. I was like, I'm just going studying for this thing, and I went and sat the March one, and came out, wrote on a sheet. So what I did was I had a big A4 pad similar to yourself there, on the passenger seat of the car, and I came out of the exam and I wrote down every question that I could possibly remember from the exam. And in the top right hand corner, I still have the sheet. I wrote and I was like, I think I scored about 20. Like the passing rate was about 60.
Okay.
I mean, I was like, this was the hardest thing.
But what is the exam? So what type of exam is it?
So is it like
an IQ test or something? Is it? No.
It's a reasoning test. It's not a knowledge based exam. The information you need in order to construct a good answer is there on the page. It's just about your capacity to go through steps of logical thinking and kind of reasonable thought. It's a very different exam than anything else that I've personally ever come across. So there's a science section, there's an English comprehension section where you're given a poem or a stimulus piece of some kind or other, and then there's an essay section, and it's like I slept.
So science, English,
yeah,
and
essay writing, expounding upon a topic of any kind, and the topics. I mean,
like in an abstract way, is it?
No, just generally, can you make your point in a concise, reasonable manner?
Okay.
And I just write 2 essays. One of my essays was on racism in Ireland. I mean, it's not anything medical or anything at all.
And
it's just
you only find out what's going to be in the exam on the day.
Oh yeah.
Or do you study for it before?
You can study for it. Like they expect you to have a first year university level of chemistry, biology, physics, and English.
So did you have that?
No, but again, remember what I said about it's not really a knowledge based exam. It's just you kind of have to have a certain level of knowledge that you kind of recognize words like enantiomers and this kind of like chemistry type, very specific chemistry concepts, but it's very much a thinking exam rather than a knowledge-based exam. You're not going out spewing a whole pile of information. You were being measured in your approach to looking at information, distilling down what's important, and then coming up with a somewhat reasonable answer, you'd hope.
That's interesting that it's... So you want to become a doctor, me, you, or anyone. You have to do this exam, and the exam is based around how you think
rather than what you know.
Yes.
And that's important.
That's interesting.
That's really... and then
because the education system isn't really based that way at all.
Not at all. And the education system of medicine itself isn't based that way at all. Okay. But the job of a doctor is actually hugely based on that kind of thing.
Okay.
Because you're coming in as a patient.
But it's very hard to test that, I presume. In anyone, like how they think.
It is.
So I've never done an exam like that.
Yeah.
How would you even measure that? How would you say this person thinks differently or better to this person?
It is a long time ago since I studied for this, but one of the things that I can remember is there would be what you might call red herrings thrown into a question. So you might have a question on some kind of biology question, and there will be information included in the question that wasn't relevant that someone might think is relevant. And again, this comes back to you have to have a base level of knowledge in order to exactly be able to work this out. But the thing that they're testing of you is can you look at all this information, pick out the bits that are relevant, disregard the stuff that isn't, and then use that in your answer. So and red herrings is really one of the ways they do that, by throwing information that might send you off down one path and seeing, do you take that bait or do you continue on in a reasonable fashion?
Okay, so is your thinking distracted? Would that be a way of saying it?
Well, it comes back, then it really comes in terms of patient interaction. So if you come into me in the hospital and I'm taking a history from you, you've got some kind of abdominal pain or whatever the case may be, I ask a whole series of questions. You give me a whole pile of information back, some of it relevant, some of it entirely irrelevant. But, you know, to someone that isn't kind of thinking clearly, doesn't understand the subject, doesn't understand what the potential differential diagnosis might be, they could get entirely sidetracked and kind of get confirmation bias and make up a whole series of things that just aren't there, when in fact the answer is potentially much more simple than that. And the information is there, but it's about just being able to identify it and work with it, you know.
So I have a bit of a fascination with doctors. Joe Peter Attia,
great man.
Andrew
Now,
Huberman.
Doctors come in all shapes and sizes. My mind isn't on the level of these boys at all.
Okay, but I'm always very, very interested in what they have to say, for obvious reasons.
Simply, yeah.
And not all doctors agree with each other.
No, that's doctors
Vanilla
differ.
McHale in Dublin, I'd be very, very interested in all the stuff she puts up, and I've had some conversations with her. But so if you're a doctor, while you're studying to become a doctor, how many hours are you putting in per week in those 4 years?
Oh, I mean,
is it all consuming?
Everyone has different approaches to these things. So, like, my approach was very different to others. But I mean, in reality, you were spending, I'd say on average, you're spending 5-6 hours a day at this every single day, without fail. Studying.
Okay.
You know, just studying on your own. And not always on your own. You would often do very kind of similar to this, where someone would have a book and they'd be firing questions at you, because you need to be able to enunciate your thoughts and be able to speak clearly and speak concisely about a topic. So there would be a bit of that, particularly in the latter years. But certainly initially, it was an awful lot of just slogging through books and notes and beating ideas into your mind.
Okay, and what is the main chunk, excuse me if these are stupid questions, but what's the main chunk of what that 6 hours a day of study is? What does it consist of mainly?
Well, for me, I used...
Is it a mixture of the biology, physics, chemistry mainly, or is it...
So again, it all depends on how you're taught. Our course was very much system based, so we'll say the GI system, the immune system.
Yes.
So you would learn about these topics in their kind of full function over a short period of time, whereas, you know, for other maybe more traditional medical schools, it's very much, you know, you have a class on biochemistry and you have a class on anatomy and you have a class on, you know, immunology, whatever, and it's very kind of siloed, whereas ours was, you know,
one topic. Then
it suited me much more in the sense of you got a top to toe understanding of how one system interacts with another, and it all built upon itself. They call it circular learning in the great words that these people.
And is it everything you learn on that course about the human body? Or is it everything you learn about that course related back to the human body in some shape or form?
Yeah, there would be a lot, but you have to remember that the job of a doctor is it's both a science and it's an art. And I sound like I fucking know what I'm talking about. I'm an intern. Like, Jesus, let's not go overboard here. But you know, I would have my own medical hero, similar to yourself. Like Startha Mukherjee would be my medical hero. He's the guy I look up to, and he would often talk about, you know, the capacity to be compassionate and the capacity to imbue a sense of confidence in the patient is in some ways as important. No, let's not go overboard here.
The science, I know what you're saying.
You absolutely, you need to know your shit, but like you also have to be able to come across as a human, as someone who has empathy, as someone that understands the position that the patient's in. The patient's in.
Okay, so without saying something too off the wall here, is it reasonable to interpret that as the medicine and the treatment will work better if you have a good human relationship with the person?
Definitely. If you can...
That's fascinating.
We've talked about placebo before in the gym.
Yeah.
And that is placebo. Like, if I have the capacity and charisma, or whatever word you want to use, to imbue you with the confidence that this pill or this treatment plan or this procedure or whatever the case may be is going to solve your problem or ameliorate your issues in some way, you are much more likely to really buy into that idea.
That's That's so interesting.
But
So
this
interesting.
goes.
I've came across that in many different
Yeah, I was going to say this.
disciplines, but it is so interesting to hear it from a doctor, especially that like the power of your mind is hand in hand with anything in the science realm.
Absolutely.
That's fascinating. So so you had the 4 years in college. You mentioned there before that you went back to college. So what did you do in college initially? What were you at for that wandering around period between 18 and going back to college as being a doctor?
Software development was the main I kind of thought I was going to become the next Mark Zuckerberg and this kind of thing, and I had very keen interests in software, but at the same time became very extremely burnt out with it. After a while, the lack of human interaction was actually the thing that killed me, because no more than kind of studying for medicine, you were spending long hours in front of a computer on your own, very solitary. And again, if I look back at it, I might have gone a different route if I had gone into a company, worked for someone else, had a team around me. But what
was your initial college course before going into software?
Computer science.
Where was that?
Galway.
In UI.
Yeah.
And that was 4 years?
4, yeah.
Difficult?
Yeah, kind of. But I'd been interested in programming since I was young. Like anything, when you're a young fella, you kind of think, oh sure, you can do anything you want. Code Academy and these kind of things have just come out
which is good and bad. When you're young and you think you can do anything, I had a lot of those thoughts when I was young as well. It's good and bad because you're nearly looking at stuff that a lot of other people are like, oh geez, that never me, and you're like, geez, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And that's brilliant in many ways, and it's going to help you try certain things.
Yeah.
But it's also naive, and when you're naive, you're going to get hurt when you find out certain things the hard way.
Yeah.
So it's good and bad, and like people, maybe you're a bit of a dreamer. You're a bit of a like, why the fuck can't I do this? Why can't I start a company? Why can't I do this job? It's a positive thing, but I suppose if in an ideal world you'd like everyone to be like that and just slowly remove the naivety through lessons, but no one wants the lessons unless they're self-taught and harsh.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've talked to you about before in terms of I would often believe I'm terrible at original thought, but what I'm good at is picking up bits from other people and seeing and getting to know other people and kind of thinking to myself, not in a kind of egotistical manner or a manner of, oh, I want what they have or this kind of thing, but thinking to myself, whatever the fuck they're doing is cool, and like, sure, why can't I? I probably wouldn't be the most confident in terms of kind of setting up my own original thought of going, this is where I'm going, but I'll see someone else, I'll get to know them and be like, oh yeah, geez, that looks pretty cool.
I think personally, there's 3 things that I like to guide me: curiosity, creativity, and leadership. So I always try and learn as much as I possibly can about all 3. Right? Curiosity, creativity, leadership. I think naturally curious people are some of the most endearing people on the planet.
Interesting, yeah.
They're just so interesting.
Yeah.
And they're interesting by being interested.
Yeah.
By asking questions. So I think that's what you're describing there. It's like you're naturally curious. It doesn't matter whether they're a doctor, computer, footballer. You're just like, why are you doing that? And how do I learn more about it?
Absolutely.
And it's definitely a quality to be encouraged because unconsciously or consciously, it's sometimes like bet out of people and kids not to be curious, not to be asking questions. Just shut up and do what you're told type thing.
Like, I know I've talked about this before about dealing with young kids, whether they're from Torrin or Clamars or anywhere else. How do you get them to see that the world is this big open place and bloody anything is possible to a certain extent? And I know, again, we're talking about naivety, that might be a bit naive, but my God, there's so much.
It's naive, but it's a nice starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you can always pare that back and kind of refine it, But like when you're young, you should have that idea. But in places, you know, and I love touring like fucking like a person, but you know, it's a small place. There isn't that much going on. You don't see people being interesting, being successful, being driven all that often. And this is not to denigrate anyone, because the best people in the world that I've ever met are from touring. But how do you, when you don't have that can't see, can't be kind of thing, when you don't have those role models that are, you know, open, that are there, that are in the flesh, how do you get that message across to people? And you know, I've been very lucky that I've been like moving to Jarlath's.
Yes,
was
one of the ways.
My eyes.
That's a brilliant point. So like, you could become you're from a small village in Ireland. I'm from a small town in west of Ireland. You only see what's around you, and like you said, some of the best people in the world are around you.
Absolutely.
But your environment shapes you. And it's a small village. Certain things aren't going to be around you. You know, Navy SEALs aren't going to be around you. Astronauts aren't going to be around you. Not too many. You know, whatever, surgeons, doctors, whatever else. So one of the ways to get that into your headspace is by removing yourself from that environment and traveling and meeting. Getting yourself around. That's probably the issue that a lot of people struggle with. They just don't remove themselves from an environment that they're comfortable in or that they know, to expose themselves to that type of thing. What you've never struggled with that, you know, and I think I'm pretty good at it myself. If I'm interested in something, I'll just go there. It's not that I'm smarter or harder working on it. It's just I literally put myself in a position to learn from someone, or put myself in a place where different ideas or different people are. How would you, what would you tell someone who needs to do that more often? How would you tell them to do that? Like, obviously in theory it's just simple, just go from where you are, go there, people around, but people struggle with that.
They do struggle with it, and it's a hard one, because in order to you nearly need to tap into a kind of elemental kind of understanding of their own, or get them to understand their own mortality. You know, we're not getting out of this alive, so you may as well bloody do it. And I know that's very simplistic, but I mean, you can only push someone so far, and you can only kind of work with them. But like, there's so many opportunities, and people are always inhibited by the fact that they think that they're not good enough, or you know, as you said, I'm not that bright, or I'm not this or I'm that. But you've put yourself in those situations. The more you open yourself up to those things, and it's almost about
comfort zone.
Yeah, like it's not that I would have thought about this before, but as you were saying that there, I was thinking about myself when I was 15, kind of deciding. I remember like I was down helping my father fence a field at home, and I thought to myself, "Fuck it, yeah, I'm going to go to Jarlath's," because I was like, I want to prove myself to all those boys. Them boys win. They win all the time. And I was like, what a number. Like, there was a couple of fellas like Jason Devan and Stephen Kerr and these guys who were like superstars in my mind. And I was like, I mightn't be good enough, but by God, wouldn't it be unbelievable if I went down there and proved myself that I was good enough to play with all these fellas?
Yes, well, it is a comfort zone thing, as in, I personally feel, and I know a lot of people share this, that it's so much easier to get out of your comfort zone physically and push yourself physically than it is to do the same thing mentally.
Definitely.
And mentally, to get out of your comfort zone and talk to people who are a lot smarter than you, or a lot better than you, or more experienced than you, is a very difficult thing for a lot of people. They would literally work themselves tooth and nail till they're physically so uncomfortable in some type of sport or endurance event, and then when it comes to getting mentally uncomfortable, they just really struggle with it.
One of the, now as you say, one of the most uncomfortable positions I've been in the last couple of years was giving a presentation on a bit of research that I did during lockdown. And my God, having to explain, like, I had two professors on screen in front of me. I was in my own bedroom, you know, it wasn't physically, I was in an entirely normal space, but they were probing, they were questioning my capacity to express the information that I understood, because I bloody written the paper myself. But just that vulnerability of going, oh God, these people know their stuff, and they're asking me questions. This could go absolutely tits up here in a second, you know.
The vulnerability is the key part of it.
Oh,
If you're
yeah.
not willing to be vulnerable, you can't get in those situations.
What a buzz after then.
Exactly.
I got up, I remember I was one of those situations where I had the shirt and tie on and I was in my jocks and on camera. And I remember I got up and I was like, what a fucking buzz.
Yes,
like,
yes.
you know, because I'd gone through that hard thing of being in that awkward position.
Yes, well, you could talk about that topic alone all day, but there's two quotes. So one of them is the success of your life is determined by the amount of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. So an uncomfortable conversation isn't just a crisis meeting, it's just going anywhere where you might feel a bit inadequate or you don't know everyone. What was the other one? It'll come back to me in a second. But so we'll switch gears a little bit. Like all of these topics we could easily talk about all day.
We'd fill the whole 2 hours with
Yes,
this.
so you have back to hurling a little bit, but before we go into hurling, the love of hurling you ran a marathon with the hurley.
I think my life goal at this stage should be to do something that's more noteworthy than doing this bloody marathon.
So it was very inspiring. I remember I hadn't talked to you in maybe I'd say 5-6 years, and I saw you on Twitter doing this marathon, and not only did you do a marathon with a hurl, which is a remarkable thing, it was around a small patch, okay, for the listeners who might not be aware of what it was. So it was a small patch of garden outside your house in Limerick while you were studying for medicine, and you went around and around it with the slitter on the hurl, yes?
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't be able to get around once, not thousands of times without it falling off. And on top of that feat, you raised an incredible amount of money for the charity, which was PPE, wasn't it, for COVID?
There was the Irish Cancer Society got half, and then there was a fund at that time. The big kind of thing was PPE.
What was the total raised?
Like 63 or 4.
64,000. That is just incredible.
Oh, she was.
It was inspiring for me. It started me thinking, Jesus, he doesn't look that different to me, and he can run a fucking marathon. So maybe I should start thinking about running a marathon. You know, because when people think marathon, they think lose all my muscle, lose all my strength. You know, won't be able to play a sport, but it's obviously not true. We know that's not true. Now, it might not be an ideal thing to do in the middle of a sports season, but
I took a couple of years off my career there.
So how did that idea come about?
Kev, it was entirely caused by boredom, really. Do you know, it was locked. It was the height of the first lockdown.
Well, usually when people are bored, they sit still, or they might. You don't seem to have this in your locker.
Like, yeah. But again, it's you talking about inspiring again, and talking about my lack of capacity for original thought. A guy did this the week before me in England, and he streamed it, and he did it in a tiny. I mean, whereas I did it in a loop, this guy went up and down in his back garden in an estate. Like it's probably 6 meters by 6 meters total length of the garden. It was absolutely tiny. I was kind of sitting there going, oh yeah, I could probably do that, you know. And I was just bored. I was meant to be studying. I was procrastinating. I was looking at Twitter. And it came up, and
it's expert level procrastination.
Oh yeah,
running a marathon in the backyard.
I just thought, like, for some reason, like, it wasn't that instantly. I sat down and I said it to my housemate Sean Flannery from Balladreen, who was living with me at the time, and we're in the midst of the biggest lockdown ever. And I sat down. I kind of said it to him, and he looked at me going, "Don't be stupid, will you?" Like, and not like Sean is the most positive fella in the world, but like I knew it was a daft idea. And it just sat with me for a couple of hours, and I was like, oh, fuck it, you know what, I'll bloody do it. And but I was very clear in my own mind, the one thing that I didn't want to happen was, if I was going to do it, I was going to do it rapidly. It was going to happen within days, because I never wanted to get to the stage where someone would be like,
no training.
No, not a chance. I never wanted to get to the stage that someone would say, how would this fucker ever just go run the thing and stop talking about it, you know? And yeah, you know, it was just something.
So you put it on Twitter. If this gets
if this gets like, I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000. To be honest, I'm not really sure why I did that. I think I probably the salesman in me wanted to generate a bit of interest in it. But I mean, it was a nothing kind of thing that I threw up.
Well, often you do these things and you don't think about why you did them till afterwards.
Yeah,
not often, nearly always.
Yeah.
So you put up, if this gets 1,000 retweets, I'm gonna run a marathon with the sliotar
in the back garden.
or the hurling sliotar in the back garden.
And
it got a lot of retweets.
It got a lot of retweets. We broke the 2,000 mark very, very quickly. I mean, within a couple of hours, it got it. And then it was that sinking feeling of going, oh, fuck it, I've do this now. And so then, like, it just kind of snowballed. Then from then, I was like, I think we broke the mark on the Wednesday. So I put the tweet up on the Tuesday. We broke the mark on the Wednesday morning. And then I was like, oh Christ, right, I actually have to do this. Mayo GA.
But it is crazy that it went that viral that quick.
Oh, that quick, yeah. And the amount of people
that's not an easy thing to do.
No, not at all. But again, it was a lucky moment in the sense of everyone was sitting at their computers, no one was doing anything, there was nothing going on. As Liam Horan subsequently said on the commentary, we were the only live sporting event in Europe that day.
Yes.
You know, it was just a moment in time where, for whatever reason, it just captured a certain level of interest. And then it just, the whole week from that Wednesday morning on, just absolutely took off. And again, people were incredibly good. And as I've said before, that the thing that I took most out of it was the sense of community that came out for those couple of hours, because on the Saturday morning, Mayo GA had come on board. They said they'd stream it, but we'd no commentators. So I hadn't thought about it. Robert Lyons from Ahmore, I was chatting to him about 10:30 on the Saturday morning. He goes, do you know what would be really good if you had commentators? That's a brilliant idea. So then over the next couple of hours, I text around a whole pile of people from different aspects of my life. Liam Kearns and Paddy Finnegan and the likes were central to it. And it was like, will you come on, do an hour of commentary? And they were like, what are we going to talk about? I was like, whatever the hell comes to your mind, I don't care. But they went on, and as my mother said to me, you know, you'd think your reputation would be enhanced by doing something like this, but the stories that were told absolutely killed my reputation. Like, if anyone ever listens back to it, they'll show what real character I actually have. But the thing about it was that the stories, while they in general were probably about me, they were common, because I'm no different. If you're from a GA/West of Ireland background, they're common to everyone. And the amount of messages that I got off it after being like, we loved the commentary so much.
Oh, of course.
Just so funny.
It was like a comedy sketch.
Yeah, absolutely.
How long did it actually take you to run it?
Oh, those land speed records broken. It's 6 hours and 55 minutes.
That's
an absolute cat time. No, come on.
No, yeah, but you have to put it in context. That's actually a very quick marathon time, considering you're going on a small loop in the back garden, so you can't pick up any stride.
Yeah,
and you're constantly turning.
Yeah, so every 20 laps,
and then
we turn.
The obvious thing with the just to keep it interesting. You went from clockwise to anti-clockwise.
Yeah. Just to, add something.
You had the hurl and the sliotar.
Yeah.
So like
26 drops.
To do that in 6.5 hours is, but that's the feat itself, right? Run a marathon with no training. It's brilliant challenge. Then on top of that, to raise that amount of money, like I worked really hard this year to raise money for a charity, and I ended up raising 6,000, and I was absolutely thrilled. I was blown away by how many people donated. But to raise 66,000, it's nearly forgotten about now. I'm sure, even yourself. Even when I brought it up, you barely were like, oh yeah, that thing. But it was an incredible thing for anyone looking in from the outside, and now looking back.
Yeah, again, I spent no time thinking about this ever. So
maybe that's the best thing to do. Just not think about it too much, just do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was it's one of those things. In as far as possible, I try, and again, fail recurrently. But you try and do things that kind of fit with you internally. That there's kind of no strife. There's no internal distress about the whole thing. And that was one of those things where I was like, oh yeah, fuck it, we'll do it. And then did it, and then a week after it was gone, and no one talked about it, and it was great. And that's, like, I never wanted it to be something, I was never meant to be something that, you know, went the way it went, because the original goal on the donation page was €1,000. So it wasn't as if I had my head going, oh, this is going to be this big thing, and I want to be on the 6-1 News and this kind of thing. But never made the late though. That's the thing.
So
yes.
So maybe Tuberty will listen to this.
Hopefully.
So to go back a little bit, you know, at this stage I love going off on tangents.
Jesus,
we've gone off on a few.
You've made a career out of it.
So if you back to the college thing, so you had started your own business after college. Was that a big decision? Because I talked to a lot of people about, you know, starting my own business over the last 10 years, and I've talked to a lot of people who've started their own business, and it's something that people see as a huge step. Did you think much about it, or was it always the idea? Or?
Not at all. We were too young and too stupid to consider anything heavily.
I can relate to that.
Like, we just kind of, myself and Rob just sat down in the McWilliam one day, and we just started firing out ideas, and he's like, what are you doing in college? And what are you doing in college, Rob? And then we kind of like, well, if we did this and we did that, and and it just kind of went its own way. But, you know, and I know I'm not speaking out of school, like, myself and Rob were idiots in terms of how we approached it. We're a bit lazy. We were doing it so that we could play football in many regards. You know, football was primary. The business was the thing that was allowing us to do the football.
Well, Tim Ferriss, I'm a firm believer of this. Tim Ferriss says regularly that the best thing you can possibly do, or one of the best things you can possibly do when you're young, is start a business. Because even if the business doesn't work out, the amount of skills and connections made and experienced, where even if you don't succeed by starting your own business, he said it's just worth more than any college course. And I've seen that in anyone who starts their own business, from like a big one to like a tiny little side hustle. They just think differently and see the world differently, no matter what their level of education or anything like that. So
definitely.
So like, there is no such thing as a failure, inverted commas. As long as you're not hurting anyone and you're not getting in debt, there is no hurting, or there is no failure with starting a business.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the most, and it was only the benefit of it only became apparent years later, but easily one of the most formative experiences, I think, because the pressure is unreal. You never get to turn off. It becomes this all-consuming, phenomenal thing where you have, to a certain extent, you've control of your own destiny, and there's very few people that get to have that buzz, you know.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. As a mentor of mine once said, he's like, you know, Cathal, the genie's out of the bottle now. You're going to struggle to do anything else after this, because your time is your own, and you make of it what you will. And that's not to say that we weren't bloody idiots in how we approach things.
Well, I did say start a business. I didn't say start a good business, successful business. Just start.
And like, we gave it absolute socks. But I mean, I know on reflection of
now,
myself.
what exactly was the business? What exactly
the vast majority
was the idea?
So the vast majority of the work was in software, or like website development, app development, all that kind of thing. But, you know, it's even now, kind of, in many ways, I forget about the work and I think about the relationships, and how, because that was the key in order to drive it. The reason it started was the relationship between me and Rob, and how strong that was, and how well we got on together, and how much our skills complement each other. But I know, and, you know, to my great kind of regret in many ways, my understanding of business itself and how businesses should operate and what's important was not where it should have been at all.
But no one's is when they start a business. No one's is. You have to like jump out of the plane and think about the parachute on the way down type thing. You know, your understanding of what it takes to run a business wasn't what it should be when you started the business. No one's is. There's no way you can see the whole staircase when you're starting any type of business.
But I suppose the thing about it is, and it's funny, me and Rob Henley, for anyone that's not aware, he got married there 2 weeks ago, and we were just chatting.
So it was just the two of you, or was there?
There was just the two of us, but then we'd other fellas that came in working with us. But I mean, the core of it was me and Rob.
And were they full time?
Yeah, full time. Yeah.
So how many?
2 fellas under us full time, and then you'd kind of freelancers that you might get in for specific projects. You know, guys that had skill sets that we wouldn't have had, like photography.
And did you have your own office, or did you?
Yeah, we ended up getting an office in Dublin beside the Russian embassy. Where was the FAI headquarters? Where's that?
I don't know.
Why? Geez, it's amazing. It's a different lifetime ago. But it was right beside the Russian embassy. That's the thing that I always remember. Why can't I think of the school?
With Putin.
Yeah, like you wouldn't know what kind of spies were sitting around us. Like it was mad, but it was great. You know, it was a very formative experience, but within that, an incredibly difficult experience. I mean,
well, you have to have difficulty and stress.
Yeah.
To get anything positive.
Absolutely. We're just, the two of us were too idealistic in an entirely different way. I was so intense. It was untrue, and everything, like the minute there would be a success, I'd be on to the next thing. I would never acknowledge anything. Whereas Rob's a very different character. He's like a goldfish, and you know, he's kind of floating around there, and he's great. But the thing, I thought I was more important than Rob because I had concrete skills and I could do X and Y, whereas Rob was the showman. When in reality, the fucking showman was actually the business.
Exactly. Well, that's something I've learned. I talk about it a little bit in the documentary. I have always fancied myself as a personal trainer. I'm good at that. I can get someone stronger, I can get someone to lose body fat from day one. But I thought marketing and sales and promoting yourself were dirty work.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
bad news. And a lot of people think the exact same. So I opened the gym and I had no social media at all till I was 25.
Yeah.
Personally, I opened the gym. I 2-3 years. When I met Angela, I had no social media whatsoever.
Yeah.
The only thing I had was a Snapchat.
Yeah.
And then you soon realize, okay, actually, you have to promote yourself. People can't find out about you.
Yeah.
You know, pluck your name out of the sky and think he's a personal trainer. He owns a gym, or same with your business. Like going hand in hand with being the real world skills and being able to promote things. It's a gap a lot of people who run their own businesses struggle to bridge, isn't it?
Definitely.
They could be the best chef or the best plumber or the best, insert whatever. They just can't get people to find out about what they do.
Absolutely. Especially, and it's both a really noble thing on one level, but it's detrimental, and it's such a hard.
It's extremely detrimental. It's make or break.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing. Like I know myself, it was such a hard thing to get over because I just wanted the work to speak for itself, and I was so vehemently passionate about that kind of the showman stuff, the marketing, all that stuff just meant nothing to me, and I couldn't buy into it. I couldn't get the graw, we were talking earlier about internal satisfaction. Couldn't ever get it for any of that kind of stuff. And yet, that led to, because Rob was so brilliant at that and believed in it so much.
I see a little bit of a trend here, because you wanted to more or less work in the shadows and then let the result of the product or whatever be the noise. You never told anyone you were going doing the medicine exam, all right? And I remember Michael Morley back a long time ago saying that, oh yeah, when Cathal went to Jarlath's, we all found out on the day he was in Jarlath's. He didn't tell any of your schoolmates. But it is a lot easier, and a lot of people will be able to relate to that. I relate to that an awful lot. It's a lot easier to do everything without anyone knowing and then not say till afterwards. But like you said, it can be very detrimental for certain things as well.
Definitely.
You have to put yourself out there and say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, you should know about me.
Yeah.
And that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably, although it's probably common to a huge number of nationalities, I think Irish men in general have a patent on the thing of do the work first, talk about it second,
Yes.
or don't talk about it at all, more likely.
Which is good.
Yeah.
But there's context when it's not good.
Yeah, and if you're going to start a business, that's not the most beneficial thing to have,
No.
Whereas, if you're in what essentially I'm in now, which is a state job, I'm a civil servant to a certain extent, it's actually quite useful, just to fucking plow on and get the shit done, because, your job is to serve other people, and it doesn't have to be a show, it doesn't have to be an Instagram thing, it's just, and there's so much value in the connection that you don't feel like you need to make any show of it, because you just get so much fucking back out of it, but then the business side, that's not suited.
Well, it's not even the business side, it's people. If you, I spoke about this to one of my mentors before, it's like, if you have the ability to make a positive change, you have the responsibility to make a positive change, okay?
Yeah.
So part of the responsibility is they don't know you can even make a positive change.
Yeah.
These people, whether they're clients, whether they're footballers, you have to tell them who you are. And social media and other types of marketing are extremely useful tools in that. So you're actually being selfish by playing small with your ability to create a positive change.
Yeah.
And that's what really helped me shape my change in of opinion and actions with marketing. Is like, okay, I have the ability here to improve people's lives, to help people. They don't even know about me. That's me playing small. It's not serving anyone. It's not serving me or the world.
Yeah, that's a very. If and when I start another business in time to come, I must come back to you to get to reinforce that point.
if you want it to go better than the last one, don't come to me. So,
but I must say, like, I know myself, I do have the itch at some point. I'm not saying today or tomorrow or anything like it, but I do have the itch to try something again at a certain point, and
all of the skills that you learned from one are there from the starting point, so you're in a way better position.
There's almost an element of, I want to right the wrongs of how I approached it the last time, to prove to myself, wait, I did actually learn those lessons.
But at the same time, you're saying right the wrongs. What I'm saying to you and to the listener is they're not even wrongs.
No,
just because
experiences. Just
because it didn't become Facebook and you didn't become Mark Zuckerberg doesn't mean it was a wrong.
Yeah,
and it does take courage is something I'm obsessed with, but it does take an awful lot of courage to just start your own business and say, this is what I'm doing, and would you like my service or product? It takes a huge amount of courage and vulnerability, like you said.
Oh yeah, hugely.
So we'll change gears a little bit to back to the hurling. So the hurling, I've read this about Keith Higgins. I don't know if he ever even said it, but he said, I've read it numerous times, I've heard it numerous times. Mayo is a small county that, he loves hurling even more than football. And this seems to be a common trait with people, dual players. They always love the hurling more. Explain that to someone who's never played hurling.
I can't speak for Keith at all, although...
But anyone who does dual and says something similar.
I suppose hurling people are very great. They're like defenders of faith. They're great. They're zealots for the thing, and they defend.
It's like
the mythology.
It's like jiu-jitsu people.
Yeah. They defend the mythology of the game itself, and as much as we're all clubmen and county men and this kind of thing, they're hurling people first and foremost, and that's why you get people on the Sunday game like Anthony Daly who will be hopping up and down for a game that may or may not be very good, but by God, he loved the intensity and this kind of thing. And I would have always kind of talked to, because I had many, particularly when I was playing both, I had many conversations about the differences and what was driving me in one versus the other. I found that Gaelic kind of challenged me kind of physically and almost intellectually as well, in terms of, because Gaelic, you can very much apply tactics, you can apply shapes to the game, whereas hurling is more primal, more raw. It takes on a life of its own, and you're just have to make it up an awful lot of the time. But having said that, there is also an element specifically for me, and I know this is echoed by other people from touring as well, that there was a guy, another guy actually, he's a colleague of mine, co-intern in Castlebar, John Cassidy, said in an interview last week on the Mayo News that in his life he is first from touring, second he's a hurler, third he's a doctor. And this idea that being from touring, and it's entirely mythology, it's entirely brainwashing. But when we grew up in the national school, like I remember we had this chant about touring being the greatest place in the world. And I distinctly remember fully thinking that was actually the case, that this was an accepted concept, that touring was just this special place and it was entirely different everywhere else. And maybe that's probably arrogance on our behalf to a certain extent. But
if perception is reality.
Exactly. But this was drummed into us and it was fully believed. And even now when I think about it, I find myself becoming childish when I talk about touring because of
I haven't a clue. Why is hurling in touring versus not anywhere else in Mayo?
Yeah.
And why is, the obvious answer, it's tradition. Okay, but why is hurling only down in Munster and those areas, Leinster, and not up towards here as much? And how did it end up being so big in touring? Apart from the obvious tradition answer.
Well, to be honest, greater minds than me are going to have to give you the answer in relation to why it's particularly strong in the south of Ireland compared to the west and north. But in relation to touring, I think it's been drummed in so strong that this is our identity, that being from touring equals hurling and hurling equals touring in our area.
Yeah. And
I know for me, I had such a sense of responsibility, and this is, I'd be very clear about divorcing this from, obviously the death of my brother had a huge impact on me, and he was hugely central to my own development as a hurler and as a person from touring. But I would have had these feelings prior to that as well, so It's not as if it only came to me at that stage. But there would have been a huge sense of responsibility that there was people giving up their lives, and I mentioned Don Greeley earlier, so people like him that were giving up their lives and give incredible time to the thing without expecting or wanting any acknowledgement for that. And I was just very lucky that I was surrounded by people like him growing up, people who I respected, that didn't care whether their name was ever in the paper, that didn't care what happened, but that were giving me their time. And I know the other lads would feel this as well, that that sense of responsibility of representing them. We've often commented that the greatest joy that we get is on the days where we have the big win, like say a couple of weeks ago when we won the semi-final, and there's always these phenomenal photos that come out after of all the players on the pitch with all the supporters, because I know this means as much to them as it does to me. There's people there that don't have children, that have sons on the team, that don't have first cousins, that are just from touring. They have no direct contact with the team, but they know we're representing them. And the amount of people, I know it's the big cliche, but the amount of people that were crying openly last Saturday when we won, how could that not stir something in you?
It is crazy when you see, and it happens every year. There's an intermediate champion, a junior champion, a senior champion in Mayo every year. Yeah. There's an All-Ireland champion, a Connacht champion. They're trophies that are won every single year, but how often they just stir up that emotion that people are moved to tears.
Yeah.
Who would barely even show emotion when serious family situations happen, but when the local football team wins, it's just the outpouring of emotion is incredible.
And how the thing is, geez, I fucking nearly get emotional thinking myself. How lucky we are that we have access to that. That we have access to this thing that stirs up such emotion, because
I've thought about that a lot.
The vast majority of people don't.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. It's the connection more than anything else.
Community. What do people want?
Connection and community. I think if you are involved in a GA team, that type of tribal connection. I don't know if you've ever heard of Sebastian Younger. Tribes. He has a book called Tribes. Right. It's absolutely brilliant. You love it. But that tribal type of connection that you get being involved in GA teams, and then when they succeed, it's
magic.
You can't put it into words. It's one of the many things that are impossible to put into words fully.
Yeah.
So
But that's what people, in many ways, are searching for all their lives.
of course,
Do you know?
some people get it from a business, and
Yeah,
some people get it
absolutely.
from different sports.
Yeah.
But when you have it, the sad thing too is a lot of people aren't consciously aware that they have it until it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
They'll only look back at that golden period as
Yeah,
the golden
yeah.
period. in time,
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas I know now I'm living a golden period in my life. You know,
Yeah.
this is not going to come around again. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's with maturity. I'm sure you didn't realize that
Oh,
until
no.
you know, you were a bit more older and more mature. But why is hurling played in Turin versus anywhere else in Mayo?
Again, I think, to be honest,
Is there any-
I couldn't give you a straight answer. The mythology of Michael Henry and those young fellas, they were all less than 18. They were, every single one of them were under 18 when they started the club. You know, even like to see your reaction to that, and I think about that all the time. I mean, Michael Henry was the only, and I've never seen it in any other
And how
place.
long ago was that?
1957. So Michael Henry very sadly died during COVID. But Michael Henry, for the length of my life, was the only fella that I've ever known that could walk into a room. He lived in England, but when he'd come home, he would walk into a room and spontaneously people would get up and start clapping, stand up and start clapping. This was the appreciation because of what he has given us. And I owe that man. And like Michael is the figurehead, but there was 7 or 8 of them that all started this together. And here are these young lads who had no idea. We were talking about not knowing the length of the staircase earlier. These lads never knew what they were beginning, but they have given me the central thing in my life. And we've talked about phases of our lives and how
Well, it's
things are
actually
important.
quite similar. He sounds like a similar type figure to Bertie McHugh and Gary Moore. I don't know if you know Bertie McHugh. He started the club there too, and it's like you just know when you're around him that this, you know, lives and breathes this type thing. And just by starting that club, the avenues they've opened up for connection for so many people is crazy.
And the meaning it gives to people's lives, like
whether they did it consciously or unconsciously at the time, the meaning and connection it gives is incredible. So we'll switch a little bit to, and we'll start wrapping up a little bit. I know I can't keep you here all day. We could sit
this
here
could
going
go on,
off
this
on
could go on a
tangents,
while if we want.
especially now that the caffeine is in the bloodstream. We can keep going all day. So fitness. So you've always managed to maintain your fitness and your strength from an early age, okay? So for someone who's listening to this who may be unfit or maybe want to get fit or want to get stronger, is there any principles you followed to keep, we'll go with strength first of all. Did you start strength training young or when you were older? You were naturally maybe athletic or whatever, and that's helped with the sports. But in terms of like maintaining your strength, did you go to the gym young, or what did you do for strength when you?
Well, firstly, I was, I kind of have a body shape that's just, it's adaptable to putting on muscle very fast, but it's also adaptable to putting on fat very fast as well.
Okay.
You know, so you do have to mind yourself. But I was the classic fella of, you know, getting a crap set of weights at 15 and like be there doing bicep curls in the mirror when I was a young fella, you know, so this kind of thing.
Oh, the glory days.
Oh yeah, I couldn't beat it. Jeez, you thought you were the man. Like,
you were the man. There's no thought. When you get that first weight set, you are the man.
Oh yeah. And then I suppose I was very lucky in the sense of moving to Gerald. It's exposed me to an entirely different level of training where I was going to the gym twice a week, every week, with a bunch of boys who were much bigger, much stronger, and it was just well managed, you know. So I probably got a very good grounding from that perspective. But then also, you know, going into the Mayo minors.
And what exercises were you doing when you started?
Oh, what was it doing? I don't think I think I was afraid of a squat rack for a very long time.
Which is common. No?
Yeah, I feel like that's the exercise that really like defines the men from the boys. Like, are you an experienced weightlifter? Well, get under that rack and show me. You know.
Yes.
So you know, it would have been very much all the usual bench press and shoulder press and like step ups and split squats and all these kind of things. You know,
so
like, nothing wild at all. But
and did you start doing chin ups very young too?
Yeah, we started. So again, but 15, 16 in Gerald's, we had what we used to call the monkey cage. It was set up by one of the trainers. I think he actually patented it and sold it then to several people. But it was a series of iron bars where you could do dips and chin ups.
I remember that. I was up in Airgate Kieran once in Tyrone, and they actually had one.
Oh, go on, yeah.
I didn't know he invented it.
Yeah. It was funny. I was down during lockdown. I was in Young Munster Rugby Club, and I seen they had one on the pitch there, and I was laughing away. Ned Burns was the guy that patented it, and he was our trainer at the time.
They're brilliant.
Oh,
in fairness, they should be one at every gym.
Yeah. But my God, was it a nightmare? You know, we train. I cannot describe how hard Jared's training was. Just the running that you would do. Oh, you dread it. You would absolutely dread it. Particularly Christmas training. Jesus, it was nightmare stuff. And at the end of every session, right, lads, all down to the bars, and you'd be expected to do chin ups, dips, jumping jacks, all this kind of stuff. So I was very lucky in the sense that the
classic, the more you're suffering,
it was just
approach to GA training.
Lads getting sick everywhere. I mean, you wouldn't sleep the night before thinking about what was to come. And then there's just no point getting, like, for me at least, training and being fit. I feel my best when I am fit. There's no getting away from this. And you go through phases in your life where certain things have to take precedence, your fitness might drop, injury, other circumstances, all that kind of stuff. But I know myself, there is nothing that makes me feel as good and in control and progressing the way I would like to as when I'm bloody fit. It's just such a magic feeling. Getting fit is an absolute nightmare. There was a particular time where I wasn't, after I broke my leg, my weight shot up. I was going to the gym a lot, but I was carrying a load of body fat. I was carrying probably more muscle than I'd ever carried previously. And the period in order to cut that all the way down was absolute torture. And I remember in my own head...
How much weight did you have to lose?
Oh, I was, like, I'm 5'9", 5'10". I was touching 100 kg. Now, I was carrying a lot of body fat, but I was carrying an extreme amount of muscle as well. I had gone to the gym because I had nothing else to do, really.
Yes.
Like a broken leg isn't something that you have to do particular rehab for. It's just time.
Yes.
So the process of cutting all of that back down again was absolute torture.
How long did it take?
2 years, handily. In terms of, because I ended up getting a stress fracture after in my comeback. After I'd come back, I think it was my first or second senior football championship game for Moore against Balladrine. I played a game, adrenaline going, final whistle goes, adrenaline stops, and next thing I had to be carried off the field because I developed a fracture in my fibula, which put me out for another, like, it just didn't, it put me out for a couple of months, and then it didn't heal well, and I had to take another couple of months out, and it was just a nightmare. So in all, it was probably about 2 years really before I was anyway back, and then that led probably into 2013 being on the Mayo panel, and that's where I was like, oh yeah, right, now I'm actually back to where I was previous to that. But I know myself, I kind of made a decision in my own head, like, I'm never letting myself go like this again, because it's just effort. It's much easier, at least for me, to maintain and top up than to go all the way back and then trying to come forward again,
Well, so, and then, like, what made you, so you came to me for some personal training about 6 months ago. What made you've already worked with brilliant strength and conditioning coaches for as long as probably you're playing sports.
Yeah.
So what made you want a bit more accountability this time? You're already very self-motivated and knowledgeable on lifting weights and fitness.
Well, like,
I was surprised, to be honest, when you contacted me for personal training.
Not to be blown smoke.
Motivation's not a problem for you.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
But, not to be blowing smoke up your hole, no interest in that. But, I have a certain amount of knowledge and lived experience and this kind of thing. But I don't really know, not in the way you know. I ask you questions regularly at the gym, and you have, not so much that you have answers, but you will tease the perspective out of me. So that shows how much information and knowledge you have in your head that I really don't have. Like, I do, it's like anything, I probably have the answers, but I need the guiding hand in order to get me to that perspective,
Because fitness, it's like you said when you started lifting weights. It's still not much different now than it was to the bicep curls and the lunges and squats and split squats and step ups and bench pressing that you started 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So what's the tweak that's...
Well, the accountability thing is a big thing for me. The one-to-one relationship is a big thing. And plus, it's almost like when you're playing high-level sport or you're taking sport seriously, you kind of always have this thing of going, what am I doing? What am I doing better than I did last year? What makes me think, right, touring like got beaten All-Ireland semi-final last year. What have I added to my jigsaw in order to give me and therefore the team the best chance to get to where I want to get to, or get where we want to get to? And just again, opportunity. I knew I made the decision to take the job in Castlebar so that I could be close to home for training, so that I could try and win this bloody thing. And then what goes alongside of that, right? Well, let's see what else I can do. I knew I'd always had it in my head that I wanted to work with you at some stage, but the opportunity just never had come up. If we'll say the opportunity had come 3 years ago, I would have done it 3 years ago. But I'm always as open to pretty much everyone knows more than I do, in my opinion. So, particularly in specific domains.
I disagree, but go on.
But like, I'm very open, and this isn't just about fitness.
Well, I said I wouldn't. I promised you I wouldn't talk about how great you were before the podcast. but it is very inspiring and not common at all that you do your 24-hour shift and then come to the gym afterwards in Castlebar. That's not normal.
No, but
it's not a normal thing to do, and for me,
it's not something I really enjoy doing either.
But do you enjoy it? You seem you're always in a good mood from the outside. Obviously, it doesn't mean you don't get worried or anxious or you're not under pressure or anything. But you're always pretty happy and pretty positive, even coming into the gym after a 24-hour shift as a doctor. It's not common.
It's not, but I would be very aware of what a great period I'm living through and the opportunity that I have. So this goal of winning All-Ireland for touring is something that is almost hard for me to put into words how much it bloody means to me and how much I've always thought about it since I was a young fella. And I'm also incredibly lucky to be doing a job that I get an almighty kick out of. The job isn't hassle. Now, the working conditions are a hassle. That's it for me. It's always a kind of trade-off between how much I love the job and the working conditions associated with the job. There's the dichotomy there. But I absolutely appreciate how unbelievably lucky I am. There isn't that many people that get to say that they're stimulated by their work, they're stimulated by the passion that they have for something that's non-monetary related, let's say. And my life circumstances are absolutely bloody excellent. So why shouldn't I be?
But at the same, I take all those points. They're very rational, but it's still not normal. But I think maybe you touched on what might be the key there, is that the hurling is a struggle, and the job is a struggle, but you're still very grateful for it.
Oh, entirely.
Maybe. It might be even more than a struggle. You might be suffering to play hurling and suffering in the job, but you're still very grateful for...
entirely. These are all... But, again, I've taken responsibility for it in the sense that these are all actively engaged decisions I made. No, I don't have to play hurling. I don't have to go to work, or I don't have to try and do the job that I'm doing. But I've actually engaged and said, no, these are things that are genuinely meaningful to me. So therefore, I'm going to bloody try and make the most of it.
Okay. So... The fitness advice, everything carries a bit more weight when you're a doctor. So you've given your bit of fitness advice in terms of the strength training. What is Dr. Cathal Freeman's nutrition advice and cardio advice?
Yeah.
Again, like there's college courses on this stuff, but briefly, if you were to give some recommendations in terms of what you like, what you've used yourself and what you'd recommend.
What I would recommend is bloody find a good podcast. I've 2 podcasts that I listen to all the bloody time. One is Tim Ferriss, and the other is a politics one by 2 guys, Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart. And I genuinely look forward to the opportunity to go for a big long bloody walk and listen to those guys, because I learn a huge amount. They give me different perspectives. So I know that's very simplistic now, and I stress, this is not advice from Dr. Cathal Freeman. This is advice from Cathal Freeman, the fella that plays hurling. Everyone has different things that make them tick. I'd say going for a walk, listen to a podcast would rot the brain of some people, whereas going for a kind of sea swim or kayaking or these things doesn't really appeal to me in that sense. But what I would say is find the thing that gives you space, particularly individual space. If you can get comfortable on your own, out for a walk or doing whatever, where you have time to think, you have time to listen to something that you find interesting, or you just have time just to fucking do nothing except be out in the open air. So isn't that magic, where you have that opportunity? If you have that, take it in as far as you can and do it consistently. Like, I know that's very, very simplistic.
Do it as a practice.
Yeah.
But the simpler, the better.
The consistency element is the thing, if you can keep doing it.
And then with your diet, what would you recommend, and what do you do yourself diet-wise?
I would find, like, intermittent fasting is the single biggest breakthrough that I have had in terms of. Now, I won't lie, I do not go as extreme as you do, where like you might have a week where you have 1 bottle of water a week or whatever.
Well, I think you are of a similar mindset. As in, if some is good, more must be better. So let's take it to the absolute extreme.
But I do find that people have been so conditioned, and it does take a bit of work and a bit of fucking inner resolve. But I do feel people have been conditioned to eat breakfast, and they've been conditioned that you need to eat 3 times a day or 4 times a day.
Effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you really don't. And when I must try and work out it in my own head when I stopped eating breakfast. But it's one of the greatest things I've ever done. The mental clarity that comes with it is unreal. There's no sugar spike. There's no 11 o'clock dip. It's just like, you're grand. You're absolutely fine. And then you're actually hungry. By the time you eat, you're actually hungry and you really enjoy your food, rather than this constant grazing that goes on.
For the sake of, When I was in South Africa at the Nile Melon thing, a few of the people working with me were fascinated, because I'd go all day on the building site, and I'd only have maybe an apple, and some water, and they'd be like, "How are you not eating all day? But you don't actually need to eat. The food you've eaten for the last week or two is more than enough." And then in the evening, I'd order 2 main courses, a starter and a dessert, and it sounds like the simplest thing in the world, but it is so effective.
So effective,
and it's good to hear. It's good to hear how much you think of it as well.
And it's a matter of kind of getting people out of the cycle. And I'm not telling everyone that this is the secret or this is the key.
It's not magic.
But you play around with these ideas, whether it's time restricted eating, whether it's calorie restrictions of a certain kind. Play. There's any amount of opportunity out there to find what will work for you. So play with the bloody thing and work it out. Like, I've tried keto. Keto was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I would have night sweats. I remember the first week I did it. I was fully pump and sweat at night. I couldn't sleep. Head was all over the place. When I got there and I got into ketogenesis and, kind of broke the barrier a little bit, it was pretty good, and mental clarity was brilliant. But it was just, I couldn't do it long term. I knew myself. I was like, I am at that wit's end trying to keep this up.
Well, it will be far easier for you to do that when you're not playing sport.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
If you're playing a sport, it's just too hard.
Yeah.
Carbohydrates are just so important if you're playing sport. So that's with the diet. That's excellent advice because of how simple it is. With the diet exercise advice you're after giving there, I'm glad. I'm nearly relieved that it's that simple. It's nearly the advice any personal trainer would give. Walk, do some basic strength training, compound movements, and don't eat too much food. But is there anything in particular, you've lost 6-7 kg in the last 6 months, is there anything in particular you changed?
So
you're very lean now.
One, I stopped studying for final exams. There's no point getting away. That consumed me consumed me for a long time, but particularly for the 5 months before I met you, for the 5 months prior to that.
Stationary.
Just sitting at a desk for 12, 14 hours every single day without fail. There was no break. I mean, I think I seen my girlfriend 3 or 4 times over the course of that 6 months. So that's one big thing. Second thing would be I just became far more conscious of what I was eating, what I was trying to achieve, and linked the two together. And the kind of planning. It's funny when you start linking kind of internal interests with actions, you end up to plan much, much better, and you become far more mindful of what it is that you're buying in the shop, what it is that you're cooking, what it is that you're trying to achieve. That all becomes part of the one kind of daily routine. And I suppose the other element, and my girlfriend would definitely kind of corroborate this, I have a very simple diet. Like, I know what I enjoy, and there's about 5 or 6 things on that list, and that's what I eat. If you remove options, life becomes very easy. It's
genius by simplicity.
Yeah, it's like having a capsule wardrobe. You have a couple of things like a shirt and slacks; they all work together. So you just gotta mix and match as a go, and it takes a whole pile of stress out of things.
It does. So, is there any? We'll start to wrap up now a little bit. So I know you're very busy and you're trying to fit everything in at once, and it is Christmas time. So is there any, before we move on to the last piece, is there any advice you'd give to your younger self at maybe Cathal aged 20?
20?
Because I think that's a lot of the demographic that I work with.
Yeah.
And I love working with.
Yeah.
And it's probably when I was struggling the most was at that age, and I think it's just so common for young men to struggle at that age and feel just lost and aimless. Is there any advice you'd give in hindsight?
What I would say is that not that I've ever thought about this really, but what comes to mind initially is just fucking try things. You have time, you have the capacity to make mistakes, work it out, work yourself out, and come back. Nothing is set in stone at 20. Everyone's an idiot at 20. I can't describe to you how much of an idiot I was at 20. But again, you do have the capacity and the time to work yourself out. It's difficult. I think back to myself at 20, and while I know I was an idiot, I'm not sure I'd change a huge amount, because as we were saying earlier, the amount of experiences that I developed from the idiotic decisions that I made.
Of course, and it's very nice to look back at the stupid things you did. I could write a book on them when I was around that age, and be what Gabor Mate calls compassionate inquiry, or compassionate self-inquiry. So that when you look back, you're not like, oh, I was such a fucking ass, or I was and absolutely beating yourself up. You're looking back and you're thinking, okay, he shouldn't have done that, but
Yeah, that actually brings me to an excellent idea of being gentle with yourself.
Yeah, which isn't easy.
That's not easy.
It's far more common with a lot of the lads that I know and talk to and have coached to be so hard on yourself. To be so hard on you, like you're lazy, you're stupid, you're just that negative self-talk, which I've struggled with a lot. And you could, outwardly, you could appear like you're the most confident person ever, and that could be your internal dialogue.
Yeah, entirely. And it's all, the confidence element is almost a defense mechanism, because you are so internally unsure. But again, it's very easy, almost. It has to be a lived experience. It's very easy for me to say these things, in hindsight.
Yes.
Oh, I was an idiot. Oh, I did this and that. At the time, there's no talking to me. Absolutely no talking to me. And my capacity for self-reflection at that point was probably close to zero to a certain, or in certain dimensions at least. So what's the advice? Be as gentle with yourself as you can while also expecting yourself to progress. That's a hard duality to hold in your head at one time. But in as far as you can, do that. And then secondly, just bloody try things. Whatever speaks to you internally. Don't try things because of Instagram. Try things because in here, and I know I for anyone that's listening, I'm pointing to my chest, and I've talked to Kevin about this. I don't really have a term for this, but in as far as possible, the thing that talks to you internally, that you don't need to show off about, that you don't need to tell other people about, but that internally satisfies you. That's it. If you can find things like that, it's absolute magic.
Brilliant. That's brilliant advice. So, and finally, have you any books, podcasts, documentaries that you're loving that you have helped you a lot? I know you mentioned Tim Ferriss there. I've got a Tim Ferriss obsession.
That you were I would have listened to Tim years ago, and you reignited it since I started working with you. Things. What do I read?
Do you have a book?
So there's kind of two books that I would. Three books that I would constantly, anytime this question comes up. One is The Emperor of All Maladies by Siddhartha Mukherjee. I mentioned him earlier. He's an oncologist from New York, and it is a fascinating insight into cancer. Cancer is like the Death Star of diseases in the world or in humanity, and it's an incredible kind of exploration of the role that cancer has played in our minds as a race since it was first founded. And it's not a medical book, it's a kind of a medical historical book, and I couldn't recommend people to read it, because I couldn't recommend it strongly enough to read it.
So what's the name?
It's called The Emperor of All Maladies. It was his first book, and he won the Pulitzer for it. He's a phenomenal writer. Even if you want to read it from an English literature point of view, he's just brilliant. It's so accessible, it's funny, it's sad, it's just phenomenal. Second thing is a book called On the Road by Jack Kerouac. This sounds like I prepared this answer. I really didn't. But On the Road by Jack Kerouac, it had a huge impact on my life in my kind of early to mid 20s in terms of how I viewed the possibilities of life and the need for certain periods. I know I certainly went through this. I had a need for hedonism. I had a need to experience fucking excitement and passion and a world that was entirely foreign to me at that point, and that was one of the books that opened my eyes to that. So Jack Kerouac, On the Road, he was part of the Beat Generation, a phenomenal group of writers, very almost in the opposite to Emperor of All Maladies, very inaccessible, a very difficult read because of how it's structured. The sentences in some cases don't make sense. He wrote it. So he had a very difficult problem with writer's block. So his wife gave him cocaine and coffee, and he wrote it on a 3-week. So this is back in the 50s. He wrote it on he stapled like 1,200 A4 pages together. So back in them days, typewriter, you had to take out a page, put back a page in. This caused him writer's block. If he stopped his flow at all, it fucked him. So he stapled 1,200 A4 pages together and just banged it out over the course of 3 weeks. He barely slept for the whole course.
So that's what it takes to write a book: cocaine and coffee.
Cocaine, coffee, and 1,200 pages. Bang, bang, bang. And then the other one is just more kind of out of general interest is Wolf of the Plains, Con Igulden. It's about might be pronouncing his name right. It's about Genghis Khan. It's a kind of semi-historical, semi-fictional book, but I couldn't recommend anyone to read it high enough. It's just so interesting, just explaining Genghis Khan's life, explaining how he approached things, and not to get too deep about it, but it does have an awful lot. And Genghis Khan was killed 10% of the world's population. Yeah. I'm not arguing for Genghis Khan here. Yes. But what an interesting life, what an interesting fella, and there's lessons to be got from how to be steady and steadfast in your pursuit of what it is that you want. So they're the ones that come to mind.
That's brilliant. Well, I don't think I've ever talked to you and not learned something. So I'm sure there's plenty of takeaways here, and look, thanks very, very much.
No other, Kev.
Best of luck in the All-Ireland final.
Cheers, man. Fair play to you.